The Huberman Lab podcast number 3, using science to optimize sleep, learning, and metabolism. Let's summarize it.
Disclaimer, Andrew Huberman is a professor, not a doctor. He does not prescribe anything. Talk to a medical professional before applying his tools.
So this episode was in office hours where Huberman answers questions regarding the first 2 episodes of the Huberman Lab podcast. First question, what is the role of moonlight and firelight in setting circadian rhythms? The neurons in your eye respond best to blue-yellow contrast present in the rising and setting sun when the sun is at low solar angle. As discussed, these neurons also adjust in sensitivity to the point where moonlight and light from fireplaces, candles, etc. will not trigger your circadian clock. What's the deal with red light? Red light will not stimulate the neurons that reset your circadian clock, provided that the light is dim. What's the deal with blue light? You actually want a lot of blue light, bright light, and screen light early and even throughout the day. Later in the day, especially after around 8 p.m., you can trigger the reset of your circadian clock with these lights, despite wearing blue blockers. So blue blockers don't work. Well, blue blocker products were made regarding studies done with the eye neurons placed in a dish, not in the actual human eye. It was found that blue light was the most powerful stimulus for these cells, but not the only one. Therefore, even if you're not receiving blue light at night, there are still other wavelengths that will reset your clock. Is there a circadian impact if light is received on other bodily orifices? No. There is no direct correlation for our purposes between light delivered to any part of the body besides the eyes. Is light through windows effective? Setting your circadian clock with sunlight through windows will take 50 to 100 times longer. Prescription lenses and contacts are immune to this scaling due to them being designed to focus the light onto the neurons in your neural retina. In other words, it doesn't scatter the light like windows do. What if it's not that bright outside in the morning? In the early part of the day, our circadian clocks are looking for that first light anchor. As we talked about before, you can stay outside for a longer time, but when you come inside, it's also good to turn on bright lights to create a photon summing effect where the light is gathered and essentially being added up. In the middle of the day, once the sun is overhead, Huberman describes being in the circadian dead zone, where you won't get the wake-up signal nor shift your circadian clock, regardless of the amount of artificial or sunlight you view. It follows now to think about our second light anchor, sunset, which serves to adjust our retinal sensitivity to protect against viewing lights at night. Questions about seasonal changes in mood and metabolism. Your body adjusts the biology of every cell according to day length. However, it does this through the length of the night. Light inhibits melatonin. More light, less melatonin. When days shorten, there is less light and therefore the melatonin signal gets longer. The body uses this melatonin signal to determine day length. In diurnal animals, which are those awake during the day, such as humans, as opposed to nocturnal animals, the longer the melatonin signal, the more depressed, not clinically, though that can happen, our systems of reproduction, mood, metabolism, regeneration of hair and skin cells, etc. tend to be. When the melatonin signal is shorter, these effects are reversed, rather enhanced. That is not to say you should try to make your melatonin signal as short as possible, because melatonin has important effects on the immune system, transmitter systems, and other benefits. It will be a matter of self-experimentation with your light anchors to optimize your mood and metabolism. A quick word on melatonin. Melatonin is synthesized from serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter associated with feelings of well-being. It tends to stimulate stillness rather than action, compared to dopamine, which is a feel-good neuromodulator to stimulate action. What's the difference between epinephrine and adrenaline? They're actually the exact same molecule, except adrenaline is secreted from the adrenal glands, while epinephrine is released in the brain. Both tend to stimulate agitation and the desire for action. When should you exercise? There are 3 important body temperature windows that are best to work out during. These times are roughly 30 minutes after waking up, when we receive our cortisol pulse, 3 hours after waking, where our body temperature is rising more quickly, and 11 hours after waking, when our temperature tends to peak. These times, among other aspects, optimize performance and reduce injury. Additionally, working out first thing in the morning, after getting your light exposure, of course, has the added benefit of creating neuroplasticity, such that your body will start to wake up around the time you normally work out in preparation for that. We've just breached the topic of temperature, so let's go a little bit deeper. Here's something important to know. Sunlight is the trigger for our circadian clock, but temperature is the effector. Even in the absence of our light anchors, our temperature is such that it's lowest around 4 a.m., creeps up around 6 to 8 a.m., and peaks around 4 to 6 p.m. This does vary between people. The way to set our temperature rhythm is with our light anchors and exercise. The willingness to engage in physical and mental activity typically correlates to the steepest slope of temperature increase and when temperature is at its peak. It's important to consider this as changes in body temperature from exercise and cold exposure can start to shift your circadian clock. Cold exposure should be done in the morning/daytime as it increases your body temperature. If done at night, we can create a phase delay such that the body thinks the day is still going, making you stay up longer and wake up later. While performing cold exposure, firstly, please make sure this is done in a safe, controlled manner. Secondly, to train and reduce your stress response, resist the urge to shiver. For fat loss and thermogenesis, allow yourself to shiver. Shivering activates the release of succinate from the muscles, which then activates brown fat, which then activates thermogenesis. This increases the metabolism and fat loss. So, is the topic of sleep subject to neuroplasticity? Yes. Consistently timing your light anchors to around the same time will help make it easier to wake up at certain times and go to sleep at certain times. Using sleep to enhance learning. It's been proven that experiencing specific tones and smells while learning, then again while sleeping, has the benefit of improving retention. How to best use non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR, and short naps. Follow the 90-20 rule. 90 minutes of learning followed closely by 20 minutes of NSDR or naps. This has been proven to accelerate learning significantly. A word on nootropics or smart drugs. Huberman doesn't like them, partly due to them not being specific to what response you're trying to engage. For example, creativity, memory, task switching, strategizing. Finally, let's discuss food. What food is associated with alertness or wakefulness? Nuts, meats, and diets such as low carb, keto, and fasting. What food is associated with calmness or sleepiness? Higher food volume, as it draws more blood from other bodily tissues, and high carb diets. Eating does induce a temperature rise in the body, which is something to consider for your circadian clock. However, the effect is minimal compared to cold exposure and exercise. As always, this is a surface level dive into the Huberman Lab podcast. I recommend you watch the full episode linked below. Thank you for watching. I have immense respect for Andrew Huberman, and I wanted to make these summaries because I understand that the amount of information presented can be daunting and hard to process. Despite this, I think it has immense value and deserves to be heard by the masses. I am in no way affiliated with Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab podcast, or any other relevant parties.